The talk of a man who was tired of life with his soul. For the study of the moral character of the ancient Kemetic. The man weary of life discusses with his soul, as if it were a being wholly distinct from himself, whether he shall kill himself or not. He is willing to do so, but is only kept from his purpose by his soul's observation that if he does there will be no one to bury him properly, and to see that the funerary ceremonies are duly performed. This shows that the man who was tired of life was alone in the world, and that all his relations and friends had either forsaken him or had been driven away by him. His soul then advised him to destroy himself by means of fire, probably, as has been suggested, because the ashes of a burnt body would need no further care. The man accepted the advice of his soul, and was about to follow it literally, when the soul itself drew back, being afraid to undergo the sufferings inherent in such a death for the body. The man then asked his soul to perform for him the last rites, but it absolutely refused to do so, and told him that it objected to death in any form, and that it had no desire at all to depart to the kingdom of the dead. The soul supports its objection to suffer by telling the man who is tired of life that the mere remembrance of burial is fraught with mourning, and tears, and sorrow. It means that a man is torn away from his house and thrown out upon a hill, and that he will never go up again to see the sun. And after all, what is the good of burial? Take the case of those who have had granite tombs, and funerary monuments in the form of pyramids made for them, and who lie in them in great state and dignity. If we look at the slabs in their tombs, which have been placed there on purpose to receive offerings from the kinsfolk and friends of the deceased, we shall find that they are just as bare, as are the tablets for offerings of the wretched people who belong to the corvée, of whom some die on the banks of the canals, leaving one part of their bodies on the land and the other in the water, and some fall into the water altogether and are eaten by the fish, and others, under the burning heat of the sun, become bloated and loathsome objects. Because men receive fine burials, it does not follow that offerings of food, which will enable them to continue their existence, will be made by their kinsfolk. Finally, the soul ends its speech with the advice that represented the view of the average Kemetic in all ages: follow after the day of happiness, and banish care, that is to say, spare no pains in making yourself happy at all times, and let nothing that concerns the present or the future trouble you. This advice, which is well expressed by the words which the rich man spoke to his soul, "Take your ease, eat, drink, and be merry," was not acceptable to the man who was tired of life, and he at once addressed to his soul a series of remarks, couched in rhythmical language, in which he made it clear that so far as he was concerned, death would be preferable to life. He begins by saying that his name is more detested than the smell of birds on a summer's day when the heavens are hot, and the smell of a handler of fish newly caught when the heavens are hot, and the smell of waterfowl in a bed of willows in which geese collect, and the smell of fishermen in the marshes where fishing have been carried on, and the stench of crocodiles, and the place where crocodiles do congregate. In a second group of rhythmical passages, the man who was tired of life goes on to describe the unsatisfactory and corrupt condition of society, and his wholesale condemnation of it includes his own kinsfolk. Each passage begins with the words, "To whom do I speak this day?" And he says, "Brothers are bad, and the friends of today lack love. Hearts are shameless, and every man seizes the goods of his neighbor. The meek man is destroyed, and the audacious man makes his way into all places. The man of gracious countenance is wretched, and the good are everywhere treated as contemptible. When a man stirs you up to wrath by his wickedness, his evil acts make all people laugh. One robs, and everyone steals the possessions of his neighbor. Disease is continual, and the brother who is with it becomes an enemy. One remembers not yesterday, and one does nothing in this hour. Brothers are bad, faces disappear, and each have a worse aspect than that of his brother. Hearts are shameless, and the man upon whom one leans have no heart. There are no righteous men left, the earth is an example of those who do evil. There is no true man left, and each is ignorant of what he has learnt. No man is content with what he has, go with the man you believe to be contented, and he is not to be found. I am heavily laden with misery, and I have no loyal friend. Evil have struck down the land, and there is no end to it. The state of the world being therefore, the man who is tired of life is driven to think that there is nothing left for him but death. It is hopeless to expect the whole state of society to change for the better, therefore death must be his deliverer. To his soul he says, "Death stands before me this day, and is to me as the restoration to health of a man who have been sick, and as the coming out into the fresh air after sickness. Death stands before me this day like the smell of myrrh, and the sitting under the sail of a boat on a day with a fresh breeze. Death stands before me this day like the smell of lotus flowers, and like one who is sitting on the bank of drunk. Death stands before me this day like a brook filled with rainwater, and like the return of a man to his own house from the ship of war. Death stands before me this day like the brightening of the sky after a storm, and like one. Death stands before me this day as a man who wishes to see his home once again, having passed many years as a prisoner." The three rhythmical passages that follow show that the man who was tired of life looked beyond death to a happier state of existence, in which wrong would be righted, and he who had suffered on this earth would be abundantly rewarded. The place where justice reigned supreme was ruled over by Ra, and the man does not call it heaven, but merely a there. He says, "He who is there shall indeed be like to a loving God, and he shall punish him that does wickedness. He who is there shall certainly stand in the boat of the sun, and shall present upon the temples the best offerings. He who is there shall indeed become a man of understanding, who cannot be resisted, and who prays to Ra when he speaks." The arguments in favor of death of the man who was tired of life are superior to those of the soul in favor of life, for he saw beyond death the there, which the soul apparently had not sufficiently considered. The value of the discussion between the man and his soul was great in the opinion of the ancient Kemetic, because it showed, with almost logical emphasis, that the incomprehensible things of here would be made clearer there.